All right, let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session today on why your prospects don't know what they need. Look, everyone, just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Please keep yourself muted. You might be able to unmute yourself later, but please keep muted so we can have an effective session today. But please, any questions at any time throughout the chat, we will announce the times to write, but feel free at any time to write any questions. And look, we're just going to wait for a few more audience attending members to join our session today. But while we're waiting for the rest of the audience, feel free, if everyone wants to type in the chat box where you're from, perhaps what city you're from as well. I'm from originally the UK. The Sussex don't hold it against me as a POM. And I moved to Australia for about 12 years. And now I'm based over here in the Philippines in Makati for the last 5 years. Don't be shy. Feel free, anyone, if you want to. There we go. Melbourne, Sean. Dennis Champagne from Montreal. Great to have you. It must be very late where you are now. Thank you for joining. James in Sydney. We've got Maggie from Auckland. Great to have you on a session today, Maggie. We have from Bangalore, all over the world. We've got a follow the sun session today. This is fantastic. This is great. Okay, we'll give it 30 more seconds and then we're going to make a start. We've got Varun from Sydney. Great stuff. All right, let's do this. So today I am thrilled to have with us a really special guest, which I'm going to introduce very shortly. John Smibert is on the session today. I'll be interviewing John to discover how sales professionals can de-risk their sales career by driving sales opportunities with more effective discovery. So let's get started. Let's move the slides forward. This is a bit of an idea on what we're covering today, a bit of a scope. Firstly, we're going to look at why does the old way of sales qualification discovery, why does it not work the same way as it used to? Has it changed? Has it changed at all? Let's discover that further. How can sales professionals conduct more effective discoveries that push deals faster through the pipeline to close? And how, what are some of the ways some of the ideas that we can explore on how sales leaders can better prepare their sales teams, business owners themselves, and even the sales professionals as well to conduct more effective discovery. So look, throughout the session, as I mentioned before, we're going to have a number of polls. I would please invite everyone to jump in and be as interactive as possible with these polls. It'll make the session far more enjoyable and far more valuable and in some ways tailored to your own personal preference, okay? Right, so moving on. Myself, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to me. I don't like talking about myself, but let's go ahead. So I'm the co-founder of Matt Cowan Prospecting. I've had 18 years of sales enablement exposure. I'm the author of a couple of books. I've made 250,000 calls. It's probably more like 500,000 now. And what I've learned as a result of making those calls, I've actually recently released a new book called Perfect Prospecting that helps sales professionals to identify perfect fit clients by providing a 7-step checklist to help you flush out the wrong type of clients and qualify to close the right fit clients that will help your company grow. Now, I'm doing a bit of a promo for the first 10 registrations. For anyone that's joined me on other sessions, you might still be waiting for my book to be delivered. It's in the final stages. We had to flush out some errors. So bear with me, you will receive some communication on that. And the first 10 people from this session will also receive communication on when they'll be receiving their first copy, okay? Now, the most important part of the session, okay, we're going to be introducing John Smibert. Now, John, I am so happy to have you on this session today. John is an Australian who's invested 38 years as a successful sales leader in 4 USA and Japanese IT corporations, including IBM, NCR, Unisys, and Fujitsu. Since 2004, he has assisted B2B selling organizations to transform the way they sell. John is super passionate about enhancing professionalism in sales. And to that end, he founded Sales Leaders Forum and Sales Mastermind APAC. He's co-authored a sales novel, which I recommend everyone checks out. And John, you can jump into that any time if you want to articulate that book. But the Wentworth Prospect is the name of that book. It's about a young salesperson from a startup company attempting to sell into a large corporation. So John, really happy to have you on the session today. Now, your book's already out for purchase now, isn't it?
Yeah, just released this month. So
great stuff.
Yeah, we're wildly excited about it. It's been sitting in Amazon USA as the #1 release for the months, and still sitting there as that. So it's doing well. But what we're going to talk about today, I think, is reflected in that book. And I was just trying to get a story together that would help salespeople and sales leaders really understand what I believe is the right way to sell. And we'll talk more about that. And so we wrote a story with some great characters, and there's 3 of us co-writers, Wayne Maloney and Jeff Clulo, and Jeff came in late-ish in the deal, and he knows how to write a novel. So it is a page turner.
Great stuff, John. I'm really looking forward to getting through that book as well. And for anyone that's looking at the slides, we're going to drop those very soon. But a bit of an overview there, but feel free to contact John if you've got any questions on his book. But look, we're going to start with our first talking point. So bear with me while I drop the slides. I'm not a fan of having slides up during our talking. So give me 3, 2, 1, and we will say goodbye to those slides and get a good conversation going, all right? Okay, so no one should be able to see the slides anymore, including me.
A few friends of mine up there, I see.
Very good. All right, so let's get started. Technological issues. So the first point we're going to look at today, why does the old way of sales qualification discovery not work anymore? Okay, and why has this changed, and what's changed? Has anything really changed at all? So the first poll we're going to raise has just been launched now. Okay, we want to understand, when it comes to driving sales through the discovery cycle, what is your biggest problem that you or your sales team encounter? Is it lack of good qualification, prospects buyer demanding, prospects refusing to disclose? Go through that. Let us know. If there's nothing on there for you to pick, please jump onto the chat box and let us know. And I'm going to make sure that's activated as well. All right. So please be as interactive with that as possible. Okay. All right. And we're going to move on to our first talking point. So as I've mentioned, sales discovery, what has changed? Honestly, John, I think in all honesty, I don't think anything's changed. I think good discovery has always worked well. I just think, unfortunately, salespeople are taught on, I guess, manipulation of a customer to a specific outcome. That seems to be a major issue that I'm seeing across sales leaders at the moment. Buyers are hit on every angle. Decision makers are being hit by so many approaches. So a really big issue right now, when 10 years ago, it was very different, and they just don't have time, C-level, to check out all these different angles. So when you're trying to reach someone to have an effective discovery, you might be bumped off half the time just because they don't have the time to do it. Look, I mean, especially since COVID as well, with everyone working from home and everyone's mentalities being in a different shape or form, I guess decision makers again have zero time to explore multiple approaches. So John, I'm curious, just from your experience, how do we, if these issues are there, right, and people are being hit by a angle and they don't have any time anymore and it's hard to reach people, how do we drive disruptive and effective conversations with so much noise in the sales arena, so to speak?
There's a very simple answer to that, and that's got to be 100% focused on the client and the top of mind issues the client's got. And we just forget that all the time. We need the right mindset to sell. And I think you're right. The bottom line in sales hasn't changed a lot. The good salespeople and the way they sell hasn't changed a lot, because they approach a client with the client's issues and challenges in mind. They understand the client's top of mind issues, and when they get into a conversation, it's about the client. It's not about our product or our company and so on. And I really challenge every salesperson I talk to and every sales leader I talk to. you need to learn how to have those conversations with a client without talking about your company and your product. And often in the environment I'm most used to is fairly large and complex B2B. You can have 3 months of conversations with a client and never talk about your product. And that's the true type discovery, and the type of conversations and the type of selling that is absolutely essential.
Right. I have to agree. I think, I have to agree with that completely. Just thinking of my own experience and just how, it's so easy for salespeople to talk about product, right? To just it's almost like vomiting on your prospects, and it has to all be about the customer situation. This is super critical, John. I completely agree. So why are we talking about product? Why are salespeople doing it? I mean, most salespeople, I guess, have it engineered into them that they need to talk about product. That, for me personally, in my sales career, that's what I was taught. And there was some great sales training at some of the tech companies I worked with, like Sander training, that sort of went around that a bit. But it was always about asking questions that related back to my product, which I guess just doesn't work anymore, right? I mean, this is the worst thing you can do. So, John, why do you think salespeople want to projectile vomit so quickly on their prospects? What, I mean, is it the way they've been taught? Is it the desperatity around KPIs? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, a little bit of everything. You've just mentioned a lot more.
Yeah.
Our friend Tony Hughes often says the words that sales management are the weak chain and a weak link in the revenue chain. And so sales leaders need to stand back and say, what is my behavior doing, or how is it impacting on the behavior of my sales team? Because more often than not, what they say and how they behave will drive the behavior of the salesperson. So if their conversation is all about, tell me about this deal, where's it at, when's it going to close, when are we going to see the revenue, all that sort of stuff, and hey, you haven't got enough in your pipeline, you've got to get more in your pipeline because you've got to have 4 times or 5 times whatever the close, based on the close rate, what you're going to get out the bottom and so on. All that sort of behavior then drives the behavior of the sales guy in front of the client. So the client wants to ask all the qualification questions. Sorry, the salesperson wants to ask all the qualification questions that we taught. What's the size of it? Have they got the budget? And all those sort of qualification questions. And as soon as you start focusing your conversation around that, you're immediately not creating value for the customer. And I guess that's the essence of selling, is every single time you talk with a customer, you must create value through the conversation. Otherwise, they won't want to see you again. They won't want to talk to you again. And so how do you create value? You don't talk about your product. They don't want to know about your product until they're ready to buy. Okay. And then obviously you talk about how the product will help them deliver all the outcomes that we've been talking about.
I have to 100% agree. But when we look at the sales leaders, John, so I think that's a really big point, and their behavior. I relate back to my time, and I'm not going to name the company, but it was a large technological company I worked for. And I just remember us all going in a room for what I thought was a sales meeting, a motivational sales meeting, only for all 20 of us to be guided through how a PIP works and how we'll be put on a PIP if we don't hit our numbers. And I mean, after that session, a few people unfortunately left. It was just it was a fear tactic, right? But certainly when I was listening to the conversations around it was all about product. It was pushing a massive amount of product to not ask. Everyone was in fear of their jobs, right? And that was the attitude and the behaviors pushed by the sales leader, which just wasn't effective. And I think that's a very interesting point, John. And do you see that changing now? Do you see that still as a major issue, or is there a new sort of transformation happening right now in that space of some sort?
I think there's less and less training, sales training with manipulative sort of techniques being taught. Right. But there's still a long way to go in some organizations to understand how to effectively have the conversation with the customer without talking about your product. That's where a lot of organizations need training. Now, to do that, there's a whole lot of things you need in place. For example, the salesperson must have strong domain expertise in the customer's domain, or certainly some aspects of the customer's domain. Now, if you haven't got expertise in the customer's domain, then how do you hold a conversation with a customer? And sometimes we train our people in a product and how a product might work in a customer's environment, but we don't really teach them or help them get a good understanding of the customer's domain. Or it's interesting in the book, Wentworth Prospect, we spent a lot of time talking about, well, the heroine is actually builds a lot of domain expertise, and in the book they talk about how she does that a little bit. And she's selling cybersecurity solutions into the financial industry. So what does she need to know? She needs to really have a deep understanding of all the cybersecurity issues that's happening out in the marketplace, but particularly in the banking environment, and how that impacts banks, and what all the collateral issues and challenges are associated with that. And in the book, she actually starts talking at conferences about cybersecurity and the issues in the financial industry and so on. So she builds this domain expertise, and now she's able to walk into any senior executive in a banking organization and ask the right questions. It just happens naturally because she got the domain expertise. So that's number one. And I see so many organizations out there training salespeople in their product and a little bit about what that product will do in the customer, and then pushing them out there to start having those conversations. Immediately I start talking about the product and what the product will do for the customer, rather than the other way around. What are you trying to achieve, Mr. Customer? What are the challenges and issues you've got? Have you got this issue? Because that seems to be top of mind in your industry right now. Let's talk about that and what sort of implications that's having in your organization. And through that conversation, I'll bring insight to the table. I'm not going to bring insight by telling you. I'm going to bring insight through asking you the right questions and leading your thinking through a process. And that's the skill of selling. So, whether we really want to get down to what is a process for discovery or not in this conversation, some people probably want to know that. And if we don't, other people, you can approach me and we can have more of a deep conversation about it. But it's understanding how to do that discovery, and it's understanding how to disrupt the customer's thinking. Now, you raised the word qualification early in the conversation.
Yes.
I think too many of us are really too heavily focused on qualification. Yes, we need to make sure we get the right deals in our pipeline. And we need to make those decisions. But right back at the beginning, sometimes we're approaching the wrong customers from day one. We probably never should be talking to them. So there's all sorts of tools today where we can get to understand our target customer base and really pinpoint those that are likely to be our best prospects before we even start engaging. And also, really importantly, understanding their top of mind issues, what sort of triggers have happened in their industry or in their company that will be helping us understand what will be on their top of mind. So if we can hit those early in the engagement, early in the conversation, then what's qualification? I mean, we've got that right. We've already got a qualified prospect. Yes, we've got to make sure that it's going to progress, and we need to test that through as it goes through the pipeline. But we put too much emphasis on mass calls to mass target audience, target customers, without doing all that work up front. And yes, then we're playing a numbers game, and the sales management are going to start managing a numbers game, which is the wrong way around.
So true. Yeah.
We need less in our pipeline, not more in most organizations. We need the right deals in the pipeline. And that's not because we haven't qualified properly as an individual salesperson. It means we haven't been putting the right people into the pipeline in the first place, in my experience.
That's great, John. There's no point calling 1,000 prospects if 950 of them are the wrong type, right? Without the correct research that's done, like say having the right domain, understanding top of mind triggers. What's a trigger event? Is there a merger and acquisition that's perfect for your solution? You're not going to mention that. You're going to go in there and talk about it, right? And you do your research first. That's brilliant. Hey, John, I think we should. Let's. I think I'm forgetting about the audience. We've got some questions coming in. Gunnar, Habits. Sales says sales managers often make the mistake of thinking about sales process stages instead of the customer's journey, knowing that this is not linear at all. That's a very good point, Gunnar. I agree. You got anything you want to add to that, John?
Hi, Gunnar. Good to hear from you. Gunnar's a friend of mine, so they're really good to see you.
Hey, John.
Hey, Gunnar makes an absolutely vital point there, and that is that the buyer will be going through a journey, and part of qualification for us is understanding where the buyer is in their journey and understanding if we've still got the opportunity to influence their thinking. Because if they're late in the journey, that's when we get the phone call, hey, we're thinking about buying a XYZ bit of software or whatever it is. You guys provide it. Would you be interested in getting an RFP? 99 times out of 100, you're in too late, right? Way too late. You're not going to influence their thinking. You know, you build this this webinar. You know, if I can remember what the words were, if I can find them, probably can't short notice. But basically, why your prospects don't know what they need. Now, when a prospect comes to you and says, I know exactly what I need, and you provide them, so I want you to put a proposal on the table, it's too late to change their influence. If they think they know what they need and they're ready to buy, qualify them out or ask a few very pointed questions. So we need people that are very early in the buying journey. Now that contrasts significantly to what a lot of the experts out there say. You know, the old CEB models and research which said, you know, the buyers typically 65 or 70% of the way through their buying journey before they call a vendor. So learn how to sell when they come to you, 65% of the way through the buying journey. I'm saying don't sell at that point. You're in too late. Find the customers that are very early in the buying journey that's either just had their thinking disrupted or the business disrupted in their thinking, and they're going to start thinking about a problem they've got. You need to be there then, not when they've already decided what they need. So but answer Gunnar's question or statement. The buying journey is absolutely critical, and we must understand it. And then we align our activities, our process, if you like, our sales process, to the buying journey. It's not the other way around.
Thanks, John. I have to agree again. So we'll answer one more. We've got one more question or point from Tony Bonanno. Again, I know Tony. I used to work with him many years ago. I think yourself, John, you're familiar with Tony.
Tony and I have done an interview series ourselves. It's all up there on YouTube on the Sales Leader Forums YouTube channel. Great series. I feel embarrassed here talking to Tony. He knows everything I'm talking about and more, and he's probably going to correct me on a few things.
Fantastic.
G'day, Tony.
So Tony is mentioning recruiting salespeople without business acumen is often the start of the problem. Basic sales acumen. I mean, what do you reckon, John? Surely you wouldn't hire someone with basic sales acumen, right? I mean, maybe a graduate potentially, but yeah.
I'd be interested to see where Tony's coming from there, but it's really interesting. Now, we've got a shortage of people here in Australia at the moment, skilled people, and skilled salespeople are one of those. And everybody's out there butting their heads with all the recruiters trying to chase the same people. And yet, people that jump from company to company, and what's the current research show? It's about the average tenure of a B2B salesperson is 15 months or something along those lines. Now, to me, that's crazy. You're not hitting your straps and getting productive until close to that 15-month time frame. So we need to get people that we can develop into good salespeople that fit within our culture. And what does that mean? Well, it can mean all sorts of things, but you can source people with domain expertise and make them salespeople. Now, it's a longer process sometimes, but it's a much more productive process. You can also find salespeople out of one industry and put them into another industry. If they have the domain knowledge in a customer environment, you're going to be better off doing that than finding the top salesperson that's in your particular industry, or even somebody with domain knowledge in the customer's industry that's jumping out of one supplier into another supplier. They're sometimes a worse salesperson to hire, because one is their way of selling and their culture, Well, and they've operated in a culture that's going to be probably different to yours. Trying to change them into your culture. That's why so often good salespeople with good track records, you move from one company to the next company and they fail, right? So domain expertise in the customer's environment is number one. I've got a client that sells into the construction industry, and when we were working through this issue, he had a big turnover of salespeople, and he was trying to hire experienced salespeople. We went and said, let's have a little experiment. Let's go and find really good people that have a very deep understanding of the construction industry, worked in the construction industry, but never sold. And let's bring 5 of those in and see how they go. Well, I'll tell you, 4 of them are now his champions, absolute champions. He taught them how to sell. They already had the domain expertise. They already had the understanding of how to have the conversation with construction companies.
So very good, John. So just for the interest of time, we're going to move on to our second point. But I want to, I want to evaluate the first poll, if I may. So it seems that the majority of the audience is saying that prospects are refusing to disclose key issues. I mean, look, I've got different views, and I think if you ask the right questions and there's a genuine need, they will disclose the issues. But yeah, and maybe people are more tightened up now because of the mental side of COVID, and we can use those excuses on and on. And yeah, it is hard. We can't lie. It is a very challenging playing environment right now, selling arena, let's call it that. But are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that more of the, hey, we're struggling because they're not giving us the information that we want, but they're not telling us what their challenges are?
Sometimes I'll answer these questions very black and white.
That's all right.
And this one I will, but look for the grey areas, please. If a customer is reluctant to tell you something, you haven't earned their trust that you're somebody of value to talk to.
Yes.
Okay. And you're probably coming across like, I've got something to sell, therefore I'm asking questions that are going to help me sell you, Mr. Customer, rather than, let's really have a conversation. I think I can bring value to the table through my insight and experience and so on. I understand your domain. Let's have a conversation on that topic that's top of mind and see if I can bring some ideas and thoughts to the table that might be of value to you. Now, you obviously don't use those words, but that's the attitude. Your mindset needs to be on the customer and bringing your domain expertise to through the conversation, through the questions you're asking, the way you ask those questions. And it's very, very quickly, I've seen customers turn around, I'm meeting with a salesperson, I'm going to be reluctant to talk, and you suddenly have the right sort of questions and the right sort of conversation happen. They just turn around. Now they're totally open. They understand there's going to be a value having a conversation with you.
Great stuff. So just for the interest of time, John, we'll move on to our second talk.